friends, Heidi here from Rain Country Homestead. God is good all the time. Today I'm going to make meatballs and gravy, a pretty simple dish, and I'm going to be serving it over white rice. This is something you can put over toast if you would like, or mashed potatoes, or even noodles. But Patrick, he really likes white rice when I make this kind of dish. So that's what it's gonna be. So let's get started. What I have here is 1 pound of grass-fed ground beef. And got it all pulled out of the freezer and thawed out. So I'm just kind of breaking it up a little bit. When I make my meatballs, it's another one of those things I don't always do exactly the same every time, but there are some things that I do the same every time. And one is, and this is what I also do for meatloaf, is I use about, this would be about a ½ cup of oats. I do not use breadcrumbs. I like to use oats. And sometimes I'll throw seeds in there. And today I've never done sesame seeds in my meatballs, but I think I'm going to throw a little bit of sesame seed in there today. So that's a new addition for me. Sometimes I put other seeds like poppy seeds. Another new one I'm going to try is the chia seeds. I've never tried the chia seeds in the meatballs. And the purpose for the seeds is really just to add a little more nutrition. But I thought the sesame seeds might add a nice flavor. And when I'm doing meatloaf, I got the tomatoes out because I thought maybe about putting these in the meatballs, but I'm thinking, nah, I really don't want to. But I really like using this in my homemade meatloaf. But I will go ahead and put in the dehydrated jalapenos. Just going to break them up. These are just dehydrated so nicely. They're just easy to break up smaller or leave in slices. I'm going to, instead of the red pepper flakes, I'm going to use some cayenne pepper. I'm going to make these real spicy. Cayenne pepper, like this, ends up making it much more spicy than using the red pepper flakes. And I like to use basil almost all the time. Sometimes I'll use sage, but I'm going to leave out the sage today. My mixed greens, as always. As you'll see in a lot of my other videos, I like to use those mixed greens. And all of this stuff is dehydrated because it's going to help, just like the oats or if you're using breadcrumbs, soak up any extra moisture. So oregano, this is all homegrown herbs here. Lavender leaves, really like using lavender leaves and stuff. Okay, and a little bit of salt, about a teaspoon. I'm going to put in some granulated garlic. I'm not going to use the garlic slices in this because it is pretty big. So that's about 2 big tablespoons of granulated garlic. And then I do still use the dehydrated chopped onions. Okay, so I'm just going to mix that in really good. Okay, so there's one more thing I forgot to get out that I need in this. And that would be an egg. At least one egg. If it's a large egg, 1 should be plenty for a pound of ground beef. And that's going to help, that and all those other ingredients like the, the oats and the dried goods are going to kind of help hold your meatballs together. Now there's all kinds of different things you can use. You can use cracker crumbs, you can use, like I said, breadcrumbs. A lot of people do that. Okay, so my meatball mixture is all made up. I'm going to go put a little bit of oil. I think today I'm going to use avocado oil in my cast iron pan and put it on the wood stove and let it heat up. Alright, so while I'm waiting for my pan to heat up, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the gravy now. So basically, it's the same thing I use when I'm making my pot pie, my turkey gravy. Maybe I change the spices up here and there. It's just the same thing. It's a very simple, very easy to do. You can use this when you're making a tuna noodle casserole. No need to keep buying canned cream of mushroom soup. You can throw mushrooms in this and have basically a cream of mushroom soup. So I'm just gonna, normally I don't even measure this out, but since I'm doing it in a measuring cup, I can at least show you how much I'm using. That is almost 2 cups, and that's the last in there. Organic Valley whole milk. And today I'm going to throw in some whipping cream just to make it good and rich. Just going to put in a little bit, like maybe about a quarter to a half cup, about a quarter cup, that's what I thought. So let me get myself up to 3 cups total. Now, I'll probably still need to add some milk along the way, but we'll see how it goes. I usually just kind of start with about this much, get everything mixed up, and then pour it into the pan, and then just watch what it does. Now, today, I'm doing this just to try it and to show you that this is another viable option for a thickener. And this is arrowroot powder. I use the tapioca starch more, but the arrowroot powder is good for, they're pretty much the same. Tapioca starch, arrowroot powder. You can use any of them as a thickener. Both of them have the same consistency as cornstarch, but you don't have to worry about them being genetically modified. And it is really important if you've never made any kind of gravy or white sauce or anything like this, that you always add your thickener to the liquid needs to be cold or at least room temperature. You don't want to start cooking it and then add it. So you're better off having it end up being too thick, because it's easier to thin it out with the milk than if it's too thin and you try to add more starch. But if you have to add more thickener, then you need to do it in a separate, smaller container, a little bit of cold milk, water, whatever it is you're using, and then your thickener, and then, you know, blend it well, then blend it into your gravy if it's already hot. Okay, so I'm going to stick with the same spices in my gravy that I use in the meatballs, so I don't have too many conflicting tastes. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more mixed greens, not a lot. The first one was the lavender leaves. Some more basil. These are probably about a teaspoon of each. And since I use the cayenne pepper in the meatballs, I'm going to use the red pepper flakes in the gravy, and then some oregano. And of course, I still need some salt, which I already put away because I forgot. So basically, you're just going to get this blended up real well. And then you're not going to cook this until after your meatballs are done, because you're going to use whatever oil is left or grease is left in the pan from the meatballs to cook your gravy. So again, another teaspoon of salt. But get yourself like a good pink Himalayan salt. Redmond real salt is my very favorite. It's mined here in the US, in Utah, I believe. And it's kind of a beige color with lots of flecks. Sometimes it can get just a little bit gritty, but that's because of those good minerals that are still in the salt, and your body needs those minerals. Good healthy salt is actually good for you and will lower your blood pressure, not raise it. White, you know, that salt that's had all the good stuff removed from it, that will raise your blood pressure, but the good stuff will lower it because of the minerals in it. Okay, so I'm not ready to start cooking this yet, and I'll come back when I'm ready to shape the meatballs. I'll show you just shaping a few of them and then putting them in the pan and cooking them. My pan is still heating up. You want a pretty hot pan. Now, if you're doing this on a conventional electric cooktop, you're probably going to want to start your heat off at about medium-high, just to kind of get them brown all the way around. And my meatballs are not uniform. That's about the size I make. Remember, I have tiny hands, so they're not huge. But it is best if you keep them smaller, because then it's easier to make sure they get cooked all the way through. So anyway, you start by cooking them at a little bit higher heat to brown them, and you're going to keep turning them. And then you're going to turn your heat down. So in this case, I'll probably, make sure the dampers are all closed down, and then if the stove is still too hot, then I'll just put it up on a trivet and then just kind of let them simmer for a bit. I usually do that once I add the gravy. So anyway, I'll speed the rest of this process up. Alright, so my meatballs are all shaped and ready to cook, so I'm going to take you in there, and hopefully the lighting will be good enough. And anyway, off we go. Remember, this is a pound of ground beef, and then all the stuff that I threw in there. And these, obviously, as they cook, even though it's a pretty lean meat, it's still going to cook down a little bit and get smaller. So you're just going to keep turning these. This heat is actually, my My thermometer back there says 250, so this is actually good heat for browning the meatballs on. You really want to make sure they get browned good all the way around. That's very important. I will come back when these are more done, and then I'll show you what I do with the gravy. Meatballs are pretty well browned all the way around. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just pour the gravy mixture right into the pan with the meatballs. Now this isn't technically the right way to do it. A lot of people would just take the meatballs out and then cook up their gravy and then put the meatballs in. But I don't like to dirty up another pan or dish if I can help it, and this works really good for me. So I just pour, I make sure I stir it again really good with my whisk before I put it in there. Because the thing is you're going to want to simmer your meatballs some more in the gravy anyway, so why not do it while it's cooking? Boy, that was a good guess on the gravy for that pan. It's just right. And so you can still sort of work your whisk around in there. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll switch to a fork because it's easier to work around the meatballs with a fork. So I'm going to go get my big fork that I like to use, and I'll be back when this gets thicker so you can see what it looks like. Alright, so my gravy is pretty well thickened up the way I want it. It's just a little bit on the runny side, but that's okay. It's getting there. But I'm going to go ahead and take it off the heat because I'm not quite ready for dinner yet. I still got time before Mr. Rain comes home, and I still got to cook up my side of green beans and my rice. And then what I'll do is I'm gonna just, when I'm ready to serve it, I'll just go ahead and take a picture of it, and so you can see what it looks like all done and on the rice, and I'll insert that picture right here. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something new. And again, I'm trying to show you how easy it is to cook from scratch, how easy and how frugal. So thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.